Hello, welcome to this video. This is going to be a bookshelf tour. The last time I did a bookshelf tour was in February of 2021, so around 4.5 years ago. And my bookshelf collection has grown quite a bit since then, so I thought it was due time that I do another tour. Before we begin, I wanted to give one quick remark about how I organize my bookshelves. I would say overall my bookshelves are a little bit disorganized, and that I guess is on purpose. I don't really like to impose order, I guess, on my bookshelves. There are parts of my bookshelves that are, you'll see clusters of the same subject matter together. But overall, I don't organize by last name or anything like that. I'll sometimes put books next to each other if they're sort of related. We'll get into this, but I have a lot of Emerson here, but I also have some of Thomas Carlyle, and they corresponded with one another, and they admired each other's works. So, and also there's Thoreau right there. So some things are kind of organized if they're kind of the same, or sort of related to each other, I guess. And so, and I wanted to bring this up because I've had friends who I've sent them pictures of my bookshelves, and they'll be like, why is your bookshelf organized that way? And I'd usually just say, well, I just like it that way. But I never really thought about the reason why. Why do I like that? And I guess in preparing for this video, I knew I wanted to give some remark about my organization, and I think I might know why now. Once I gave it some thought. Like most readers, just being physically near my bookshelves, it not only brings me, of course, great joy, but I can just stand in front of this bookshelf and just look at the titles. And I can do that for practically hours on end, just looking at the titles and just thinking about the works and just thinking about, how certain subjects relate to one another. And I think the more, I guess, disorganized the bookshelf is, the more time I can spend just staring at it, because my mind is making connections between different books just because those books are next to each other. Like an example, which is not true for my bookshelf, but just a general example. Having an edition of Paradise Lost next to a history of the Persian Empire. Those subjects are not related at all to each other. One's a history and one's an epic poem. And in terms of the content of those two works, totally unrelated. But if I have them next to each other on the bookshelf, I might make a connection between the two that I would not have made otherwise. Like I might think about, the fall of the Achaemenid Persian Empire with the context of, with Paradise Lost in mind. I might think about that event differently, just because those two books are next to each other. And I think that's why I like chaos when it comes to my bookshelves. And what's even more shocking for me is I consider myself to be a very organized person. I like order, I like things neat and clean, but that philosophy is totally reversed for my bookshelves. But I think it's for that reason. It's just the standing near my bookshelf, being near it, and just looking at the titles and thinking about the books, thinking about the different subjects and whatnot. So that might give some insight as to why my bookshelves are organized, or I guess not organized, in that way. So anyway, let's get into the books. So starting off on the top shelf here, this is all Emerson. There's actually a little bit of Whitman right there. But here we have the first and second series of essays. And this is from Houghton Mifflin and Co. And these editions were published. What year was this? It was like the beginning of the 20th century, I believe. Oh yeah, 1903. This whole set. I love these editions. They did Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr., they did Nathaniel Hawthorne, they did Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. I'll show you this in a second. I love these editions. And so usually when I see them, I collect them. Here we have The Conduct of Life, also by Emerson, yep. Here we have Representative Men. And then here, from here to here, we have the unabridged journals of Ralph Waldo Emerson, which I consider this to be the crown jewel of my book collection. If I had to get rid of all my books and save one work, it's this. I have been searching for the unabridged Emerson's journals for a long time, and I just got it 2 months ago. I found it IRL, as they say. I found it in an antiquarian bookstore. I walked in. I remember this. I walked in. I looked right, and I saw it on the shelves, and my knees nearly buckled. And they practically did buckle when I found out the price, because even though this set is the most amount of money I've ever spent on a single, I guess, or like on a work, on a book, even though this is multiple books, it's considering it as one work, it's the most amount of money I've ever spent in regards to books in one purchase. But even then, I got it for an insanely good price. And so every day practically, I look at this set in just utter disbelief that I have it. It's in perfect condition. And I don't think it was ever really read by someone. I think the first few volumes were read, but the later volumes, some of the pages are still uncut, so I'll need to go in and cut them. But yeah, here, I'll give a close-up here. Let's see. There it is, from 1820 to 1876. So yeah, Ralph Waldo Emerson, one of my favorite writers. Let's see. Okay. And then here we have Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman. And I wanted this particular edition because it has an introduction by Malcolm Cowley, a great literary critic. So this is a volume worth getting. And so that is the first shelf. Okay, so moving on to the second shelf, we have, it's a little beat up here, but we have English Traits by Ralph Waldo Emerson. We have Letters and Social Aims. And then we have a book. This is by Emerson's son, Edward. This is Emerson in Concord. Slim thing. I didn't know this book existed. I just found this in a bookstore. And again, I love these editions, so I'm slowly collecting all the volumes of Emerson in this, I guess, set. I still need I don't know how many more volumes. I need the lectures. I need Society and Solitude, A Natural History of the Intellect. There's a few other works. I'm drawing a blank right now, but I'm getting close to finishing the set. Here we have the Library of America volumes of Henry David Thoreau. So we have the major works, The Week on the Concord and Merrimack Rivers, Walden, The Maine Woods, and Cape Cod. And then here we have the collected essays and poems. We'll see a lot of Library of America volumes on this bookshelf tour. I absolutely love the Library of America. Oh yeah, you can see more up there. Here we have more from this Houghton Mifflin and Co. Publisher from, this is, I guess, from like, over 100 years ago. And this is a box set of the poems of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. But I want to replace this. These are like, I guess, this is like a hardcover version of a mass market paperback almost. It's much smaller than the books usually published in these sets. I want to replace this because I want all of Longfellow in this set, but I don't have his translation of Dante or the 2 volumes of prose that he did. So I'm looking to replace this. I am planning on replacing this. But Henry Wadsworth Longfellow is one of my favorite poets. I just adore him. Here we have Thomas Carlyle, his lectures on heroes. This is from the world's classics. So this is like the proto version of the Oxford World Classics. Let's see if I can find an example. Sneak peek of things to come. So this is the Oxford World Classics, and this is the world's classics. So this is, I guess, a later evolution of this. Here we have the great American historian Francis Parkman Jr. This is his Oregon Trail. I love this cover. This is Pioneer and the Indian by Frederick Remington, and it's located at Arizona State University. Here we have more Whitman. This is Leaves of Grass, but it includes... Oh, I should mention, my Whitman up here is just the 1855 edition. But this one includes this is the edition of Leaves of Grass, the Deathbed edition, 1892, because Whitman worked on Leaves of Grass his whole life. And then I have, this is a recent publication from Oxford Classics. This is The Specimen Days of Walt Whitman. Here we have the NYRB, the Journal of Henry David Thoreau. This is just a small sliver of the entire journal. I think the journal is, the full journal is around like 2 million words. Who published it? I think Princeton University Press did a really oversized double column 2-volume set of the complete journal of Thoreau, which is in a bookstore near me, and I think I'm gonna have to get it. But for now, I have this heavily abridged version of the journal. So there you go. Over 700 pages and heavily abridged. Here we have The Modern Library Giant of Moby Dick, my favorite book. How many copies of Moby Dick I've had in my life? I've totally lost count. We'll see a few more on this bookshelf tour. Here is the Library of America collected novels of Nathaniel Hawthorne. There he is. There's a second volume of Hawthorne from Library of America called Collected Tales and Sketches, which I need to get. This is a book I've shown on this channel before. This is The History of the Conquest of Mexico and the History of the Conquest of Peru by the great historian William H. Prescott. Speaking of great historians, here is the 2-volume set of Francis Parkman's History of France and England in North America. So you have Pioneers of France and the New World, the Jesuits in North America, La Salle and the Discovery of the Great West, and the Old Regime in Canada. There he is, as a younger man. And then we have Count Frontenac and New France, Count Frontenac and New France under Louis the 14th, and then A Half-Century of Conflict and Montcalm and Wolfe. There you go. There's an older Francis Parkman. I've of course, not read all of Francis Parkman, but every sentence of his that I've read, I've loved. He is an incredible historian. So yeah, that's the second shelf. So going down to the third shelf here, more Library of America volumes. Richard Henry Dana Jr., his 2 Years Before the Mast, his 24 years later, oh, it's not mentioned on the cover here, but his 24-year later retrospective of his book, 2 Years Before the Mast, To Cuba and Back, and his journal. And there he is. And then here we have the Library of America of Alexis de Tocqueville, his Democracy in America. There you go. Here we have more Library of America. This is the writings of Rachel Carson. They first came out with this, Silent Spring and Other Writings of the Environment. Silent Spring is one of the most famous ecological books ever written. And this is a book that I love, I'll never part with. This is the Sea Trilogy. It's Under the Sea Wind, The Edge of the Sea, and and The Sea Around Us. Yeah. I love Rachel Carson. Here we have the great, quote-unquote, hodgepodge book of Giacomo Leopardi. This is Zibaldone, or Zibaldone. I don't exactly know the correct pronunciation. How big is this work? How many pages is it again? Oh, shoot. In sum total, 2,500 pages, including the introduction and the notes. Absolutely massive work. And it's one of those books you dip into. You don't really read it front to back. And every time I dip into it, I read something that sticks with me. Leopardi is such an interesting writer to read, and a great poet as well. Here we've reached Petrarch. I have Leopardi and Petrarch next to each other, which makes sense because they're both Italian poets, but chronologically, they're hundreds of years apart. So first I have Ernest Hatch Wilkins' biography of Petrarch, The Life of Petrarch. For those who don't know, Petrarch is, what could you call him? The father of the Renaissance, practically. He had a huge impact on the revival of works of classical antiquity. Petrarch is amazing. So I have here all of the Atati Renaissance Library editions of Petrarch. So I have the Selected Letters, volumes 1 and 2. I should mention, the Atati Renaissance Library, this is published by Harvard University Press. For those familiar with the Loeb, this is the Loeb Classical Library. This is the Renaissance equivalent. And so what you have are the original text and the facing page translation. Such a wonderful publication series. And so I have here Petrarch's Invectives and Petrarch's Secret Book. Petrarch, for me, is a permanent bookshelf staple. I shall always have him on my bookshelf wherever I'll be in the world. Here we have the lyrical ballads of Wordsworth and Coleridge, which this slim volume of poetry basically is seen as the start of the Romantic period. This edition by Penguin does not have an introduction. It has a longer end note, but it's just the 1798 edition of the Lyrical Ballads. I'm going to probably replace this with the Oxford World Classics edition because it includes the 1798 and the 1802 edition of the Lyrical Ballads. But the most famous poem in here is The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which is probably more well-known than the Lyrical Ballads as a collection of poetry, at least nowadays. Now we've hit one of my favorites. We've hit Lord Byron. I have the Penguin Selected Poems. This is a great collection of Byron's poetry because it prints his poems chronologically. So Childe Harold's Pilgrimage isn't grouped together. You get to trace the evolution of Byron's published poetry. So scattered throughout the book is each canto of Childe Harold's Pilgrimage in line with the year that it was published. So, and there's no, if I remember correctly, there's no snippets of Don Juan in here, his largest work. But I also have this, the major works of Lord Byron, which has Childe Harold's Pilgrimage all sequentially together, as well as all of Don Juan. And so I love this volume as well. And then here we have this book from an old publication series from Oxford. This is Oxford Letters and Memoirs. This is Byron, a self-portrait in his own words. So it's a collection of his journals and letters, and I think snippets of poetry. No, just journals and letters, so that you can get a picture of Byron's life through his own writing, as opposed to a biographer. So this is a great volume to have if you're a big Byron fan like I am. And then I have here, this is a publication from last year. This is Byron's Travels. So this has verse, journals, letters, which chronicle Byron's movements around Europe. And then here we have The Last Days of Shelley and Byron by Trelawney. Trelawney is also known as Byron's Jackal, or at least there's a biography of him titled that. That gives you everything you need to know about Edward John Trelawney. But this is a great book about Shelley and Byron. And then here we have a book from an author named William St. Clair, who we'll see more of later on in this bookshelf tour. This is That Greece Might Still Be Free, the Philhellenes and the Greek War of Independence. And there you can see Byron on the cover. The title comes from Byron's Don Juan, and the verse goes, the mountains look on Marathon, and Marathon looks on the sea, and musing there an hour alone, I dreamed that Greece might still be free, for standing on the Persian's grave, I could not deem myself a slave. Yeah, so anyways, I should say what this book's about. This is about the, I guess you could say, young, idealistic, I would say aristocratic, but well-to-do young men of Europe, of France and Germany and England, who went to Greece to participate in the Greek War, the Greek Revolution, when Greece was rebelling against the Ottomans, because they kind of saw it as a Greco-Persian Wars Part 2 almost, because in their mind it was sort of like, the great Greece being fought by an Eastern invader, I guess you could say. That's the way they sort of framed it in their minds. So they wanted to participate in what they saw was sort of this parallel event to antiquity. But well, when they arrived to Greece, the situation wasn't quite as they expected. Let's just put it that way. So yeah, this is a great book, very interesting book. And I should note, you can read it for free online. It's on a website called Open Book Publishers, which they published 3 books. They have 3 books from William St. Clair on there. The other 2 books we'll see later on in my bookshelf tour. So that's shelf 3. So going to the 4th shelf, we have the poetical works of Shelley. On the cover there is a painting by Joseph Severn, and that is Shelley writing Prometheus Unbound near the Baths of Caracalla. This painting is located in Rome, next to the Spanish Steps. And I was looking for an edition of Shelley for a while. He's one of my favorite poets. And I was having issues finding an edition that I liked, because I wanted all of his poetry, not a selection of his poetry. I wanted all of it. And I wanted it in a edition that was not double columned. And I felt like I kept encountering editions of the complete poetical works of Shelley, but they're always double columned. But I eventually found this, published by Oxford, and it's single columned. It's all the poetry, and it's in a much agreeable font. I really like the font in this. So it met all my needs. I was really, really happy when I found it, and I love the cover. The only, I guess, critique I have of this edition is that the spine is a bit faded, but that's okay. The next book I have here is Richard Holmes's biography of Shelley, subtitled The Pursuit, and this is published by NYRB. They don't normally publish biographies, so it was interesting that they chose to do this. And they're actually doing a biography later this year, a famous biography of Borges, which I don't know much about. I don't know much about that work and the biographer, but NYRB is doing something similar to this later this year, so that's interesting. Here we have the unabridged memoirs of Casanova. I had, for a while, an abridgment of Casanova, but I always kept in the back of my mind that if I ever saw the unabridged, I'll buy it immediately. And eventually that happened. I found this in a bookstore, and it went right home with me. So I've not yet made it all the way through this, but I will. And the reason being is because it's over 2,000 pages in the whole work. Let's see here. We have the novel here, Venus in Furs, with a Gustav Klimt painting of Judith II on the cover. So yep, there's that. Now we are reaching a bunch of Goethe. We have young Werther. We have Wilhelm Meister's Apprenticeship. This recently came out as a paperback in this edition, I think last year, from Princeton. Faust 1 and 2, published by Oxford World Classics. This translation by David Luke won, the European Poetry Translation Prize. We have Goethe's Italian Journey. This went in my bag when I went to Italy for the first time. And then we have Conversations with Goethe. Eckermann's Conversations with Goethe. This is a recent publication from Penguin. This, I think, was like 2022 it came out. So that's great that Penguin did this. Nietzsche says it's the best German book there is. Here we have a book that I just recently got because it was just published by Oxford Classics. This is a work of Danish literature. This is The Labyrinth. I don't quite know how to pronounce that author's name correctly. And I don't know a lot about the influence of this work or its reputation in the corpus of Danish literature, but I had recently been to Denmark, so so of course Hans Christian Andersen and Søren Kierkegaard were on my mind, and then I saw this on Oxford's catalog, and I was like, oh, I should get that. It's Danish, so yeah, just got that. Here we have another one of my favorite poets. This is Samuel Taylor Coleridge. There's the critical moment in The Rime of the Ancient Mariner where The mariner shoots the albatross. What's great about this edition is it has the entirety of the Biographia Literaria that Coleridge wrote. So, an edition worth having. I don't think Penguin publishes the Biographia Literaria in any of their editions of Coleridge, so Oxford has them beat. Here we're reaching a bunch of Alexander Pushkin. We have Yevgeny Onegin. This translation is amazing. It's truly amazing. Here we have the novels, tales, and journeys, the complete prose. This is the Pevier and Volokonsky. Yeah, I think I pronounced that right. Translation. Here we have this old edition. This is the Russian classic series. There's Pushkin on the front, and this is just poetry. They also did a second. They published in 2 volumes. They did poetry and prose. So I have this. And then we have something I got recently this spring. I didn't know it existed, but found it in a bookstore, and I bought it immediately because I love Pushkin. This is the Letters of Alexander Pushkin. This is 3-volume box set. I think, who did this? Indiana University Press and University of Pennsylvania Press. I guess it was a coalition to publish this. I believe this spring this was reprinted as a singular paperback. So I could have gotten that, but I spent a little extra money to get this box set just because it looked too nice, and it was in great condition. So yeah, and totally I could easily justify it because, again, I love Pushkin. And then here we have a biography of Pushkin. We'll see this biographer later on in this bookshelf tour for Tolstoy. So that is the 4th shelf. So now we've reached the bottom shelf of this column, and we're looking now at the chief works of Machiavelli. This is the chief works and others. This is published by Duke University Press. And this has the Prince, the Discourses, the History of Florence, Letters, the Art of War, all the essentials. And it's a great edition. It's a great edition. I will say it's probably a bit expensive to get new. I was very lucky to find this in a used bookstore at a very good price, but I got very lucky. My edition is effectively new, minus, I guess, this stain here. So I got extremely lucky. I knew about this set for a while, and as soon as I saw it on the shelves of this used bookstore, I just snatched it without even thinking. And so, yeah, okay, that's the first book on the bottom shelf. Here we have the Ricordi of Francesco Guicciardini. This is the only Guicciardini I have. I need to get a copy of his History of Italy. I had it at one point, and then I guess I unhauled it, but I want it back. So, yeah, this book is often compared to Machiavelli's The Prince. So that tells you what you need to know about this. Here we have Jakob Burckhardt's The Civilization of the Renaissance in Italy, or I think, as I say in my first bookshelf tour, Jacob Burckhardt. Yeah, I didn't know what I was doing with that pronunciation. But yeah, this is Jakob Burckhardt, his famous study of the Renaissance. And we'll see more Burckhardt later on in this bookshelf tour. Here we have Benvenuto Cellini's autobiography, his wonderful account of his life, where it is nothing but a series of the most egregious lies told in the most entertaining manner. It's a wonderful book. And there's his most famous work. This is the Perseus with the head of Medusa. Interesting story. New Year's Eve of 2024, right about the moment the clock struck midnight, I was standing right underneath this statue. So I began 2025 right underneath the head of Medusa, which is kind of funny. So yeah, it's amazing to see this statue in person. So okay, this is we've reached Dante, Vita Nova, and the Commedia. I need to get a copy of De Monarchia and the Convivio. I've not read those works yet, and that feels wrong. I feel like I should have read all of Dante, so I need to complete that out. So yeah. And then here we have this book from Thomas Caldecott Chubb. This is Dante and His World. There's the author. Big work. I've not read this. This is a more recent pickup. Yeah, so I can't really say much about it, but I found out about this book on BookTube. I saw Steve Donahue recommend it, so I got this. This is a good example of the chaos on my bookshelf. Chaos, I guess. I don't really know if it's exactly chaotic, but we go from Dante to Hölderin. These are the poems and fragments. I didn't know this edition existed, but I found it in the Brattle Bookshop, for those who know what that is. And I was sort of bewildered because I knew that I knew of the Michael Hamburger translation. Penguin Classics does an abridgment of this, but I didn't know this looking edition existed. This hardcover, it's very, very nice edition, and it's dual language, which is perfect. And so yeah, I was really excited to find this, and then I have his novel about Greece, Hyperion. This is from Archipelago Books. I'm really glad that they published this, because finding standalone English language translations of Hyperion is not super easy. I only know of two other physical editions. I know, I'll try to remember to link this below. There is, on the website where you can find the PDF for That Greece Might Still Be Free, there's a translation of Hyperion. So there's a free translation of this available for those who are interested. But there was an edition of Hyperion, and from this like old series, it's like the German writers series or something. It's got these red covers. It's like there's a Hyperion and selected poems of Hölderin, and then there's Signet Classics, like 50 years ago, had a mass market paperback of Hyperion. Yeah, bookshelf staple for me. Here we have William Blake. This is the Poetry and Prose. I love William Blake. That's all I'll say. And now we're reaching a bunch of... we're reaching the Vikings. So here we have the Hollander translation of the Poetic Edda. And then we have here the Prose Edda of Snorri Sturluson. All our knowledge of Norse mythology essentially comes from these two books. This is usually called the Elder Edda. It's much older than the Prose Edda. Then we have the Vinland sagas, when the Norse discovered the Americas. We have Njal saga, probably the most famous of the Icelandic sagas. we have here, let's see, one second, Saga of the Volsungs, and then we have the Saga of King Hrolf Kraki. And so here we have the great Finnish epic, the Kalevala, which was constructed in the 19th century by, I forget the name of the person who collected all the tales, but it was a great, how do I describe it? I wish I knew his name off the top of my head, but it was, the Kalevala was not composed, but compiled in the 19th century from a very old oral tradition. So this is the great epic of Finland. And then we have the Taun. I believe I'm pronouncing that right, the Taun. The great Irish epic, the cattle raid of Cooley. And then we have Seamus Heaney's Beowulf. So that is my bottom shelf of this column. Okay, starting off with this middle column here, we have, let's see here. We have Paideia, the Ideals of Greek Culture by Werner Jaeger. This is translated by the great Gilbert Hyatt, who wrote many great books, like Poets in a Landscape and The Classical Tradition, among others. And yeah, this is a study of Greek cultural ideals from the Homeric period down to the time of essentially of Aristotle, with a particular focus on Plato. For me, this is I will never get rid of this set, never. I put it in the echelon of Emerson's journals. So I'm very, very thankful to have this set. I had a paperback version for a while, and then I eventually came across this in a used bookstore, and to say I was overjoyed to find this edition was an understatement. Let's see here. Okay, here we have, let's see, this is Theodore Mommsen's History of Rome. Now, this is not a history of Rome from the time of Romulus and Remus to the fall of the Western Roman Empire. This is just a history of the Roman Republic, so it's ancient Italy to the life and times of Julius Caesar. So this is probably still, despite this being published, you know, we're approaching almost the 200-year mark of this work. This is still a gold standard of Roman history. This is in a shelf of immortal Roman studies, studies of Rome. You'll find works even today, studies of Rome even today, that reference this. That's how influential it is. And it's not, as far as I'm aware of, there are no publishers right now doing the unabridged Mommsen. I think the most recent edition of Mommsen that I know of was published by the Folio Society sometime in the last 20 years, and that was an abridgment. They just titled it A History of Rome, a single volume abridgment. But this edition, in order to get a complete Mommsen, I had to find this 1888 edition of his work. So, yeah, I'm very, very glad I have this. Some of the pages in this are still uncut, so I need to go and cut them. So I don't think this set's ever been read, so I'm very, very happy to have this. Okay, let's see. Here we have The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire by Edward Gibbon. Another one of those immortal works. Here we have the 2nd century AD Greek traveler Pausanias, his account of Greece around the time of the Emperor Hadrian, if I remember correctly. And so the first volume is Central Greece, Attica, Boeotia, all that stuff. And then he goes to the Peloponnese for the southern Greece. A very important work. And he records a lot of temples, sanctuaries, works of art that are gone. They no longer exist. So he has some very important testimony in this book. Here, this work, I'll say is that it's a work. It's from the Folio Society, and I normally don't buy Folio Society books. I once saw them described as being the Rolls Royce of books, which is accurate. They're very nice editions, very well illustrated, but they're usually works I never buy them new, and I hardly ever buy them used. But except for this, well, we'll see other Folio Society books, but this is The Mediterranean and the Mediterranean World in the Time of Philip II by Fernand Braudel. A very, very famous work of history, probably one of the most notable works of history in the 20th century. Here we have two translations by the great translator Aubrey de Selincourt. This is The Histories of Herodotus. This is the first translation of Herodotus I ever read. I've now read 4 translations of Herodotus, and some of them are some of the translations are really good. I read the George Rawlinson translation of Herodotus, loved it, but I guess for sentimental reasons, I love this translation. This is my one of my favorite books, and so again, Aubrey de Selincourt also translated Livy's War with Hannibal. He did a few translations for Penguin. He translated the early history of Rome, so books 1 through 5 of Livy. Then he did this. He did Herodotus, and he translated Arrian's campaigns of Alexander. But yeah, this is also an unbelievably good translation. I love this edition. And so, yeah, Aubrey de Selincourt has a special place in my heart. Here we have, again, another example of the disorganized, how disorganized my bookshelf is. We're now going to Lawrence of Arabia. This is the 7 Pillars of Wisdom. I don't know how to talk about this book. I shall never part with it. That's all I'll say. It's, again, I guess for comparison's sake, like Paideia and Emerson's journals, this is bookshelf essential for me. It's the work 7 Pillars of Wisdom is about is Lawrence's account of the Arab Revolt in World War I, in which he played a very important role. Here we have Lawrence's The Mint, which is his account of being in the Royal Air Force after the First World War. He enlisted, despite his fame and his experience. He went back into the forces. And then here we have Lawrence's translation of the Odyssey, which he translated into prose. And then here we have the letters of T.E. Lawrence. I don't know if you can see that. There's Lawrence. I really need to get the dust jacket for this. I'm keeping my eye out for that. Here we have Charles Doughty's Travels in Arabia Deserta, which I discovered because T.E. Lawrence wrote the introduction to this book. This is what Lawrence says in the first few lines. He says, "It is not comfortable to have to write about Arabia Deserta. I have studied it for 10 years, and I have grown to consider it a book not like other books, but something particular, a Bible of its kind. To turn round now and reckon its merits and demerits seems absurd." So I got it because of T.E. Lawrence, and then I began to read. The prose in here is incredible. It's often compared to the Old Testament, the King James translation of the Old Testament. It has an Old Testament feel to it. It's amazing. And we'll see Dowdy again on this bookshelf tour. Here we have Friedrich Nietzsche's On the Advantage and Disadvantage of History for Life. Very thought-provoking. And so, yeah, I would recommend that book for anyone. I wouldn't call it a book, but this essay that Nietzsche wrote, for anyone interested in history itself. Highly recommend it. And then, speaking of history itself, this is going to take some effort here. We have the first 6 volumes of Arnold Toynbee's A Study of History. Believe it or not, this is only half the work. The full work is 12 volumes. The first 4 volumes deal with the growth and decline of civilizations. And then books 4 and 5 deal with universal states and universal churches. And then I believe volume 7 deals with heroic ages, and then I can't remember off the top of my head what the books 8 through 10 are about. But then volume 11 is a historical atlas, and then volume 12 is his reconsiderations, because it took Toynbee 20 years to write this work. He started in the 1930s, and this edition was published in 1944. Which at the time, these were all the volumes that were out, and Toynbee didn't pick the work back up until the 50s, I believe. So he finished it around the mid-50s. I've been thinking about this work because I'm so stupid. I have a list of books that I constantly check eBay for, or just around the internet for. I just have a list of okay, if I spot this at a good price, I'll buy it. And just the other week, I went on eBay and I looked up A Study of History because, again, I'm trying to complete this set. I just have the first 6. I want the full 12. But the full 12 ranges from $600 to $1,200, depending on the condition. So it's outrageous. And I went on eBay and I just looked up A Study of History. And then what I realized, I went to the new listings for A Study of History. And there was a listing of the full 12-volume set for $150. And I nearly fell out of my chair because that is the most insane price for this work that I've ever seen. That is, even though it's $150, that is dirt cheap for the full A Study of History. And it had been posted 10 minutes before I searched. So I was like, oh my God, I'm the first one to this. No one's bought this yet, because I knew that someone would buy it instantly if they saw it. And here's why I'm stupid. I just returned from a trip, so I spent a lot of, my wallet took a hit. And so I was really not in a position to spend $150, but I was thinking to myself, this is the only chance I'll have for getting this set at this price, the full thing. And I was like, okay, well, it was posted 10 minutes ago, so there's no one else in the world searching for this at this hour, at the same time that as I was. And so what I did was, I was like, okay, I'm just going to go take a shower, eat something real quick, and just think about it. Should I do this? Because again, my wallet just recently took a hit. So I left my desk for about 20 minutes, and I came back, and I was about to go press purchase. I was like, I made the decision, okay, I'm going to get it. There's no other, I just have to do it. I'm going to bite the bullet. This is my only chance. And I'm about to go click purchase because I had the page still open. And I was like, wait a minute. And I refreshed the page, and it was sold. So, yeah, within a half an hour of that being posted, it was bought. And I was stupid because I had a chance to buy it and I didn't. And I don't know when I'll ever get a chance like that ever again. I don't know if I'll ever see the full 12-volume set at $150. So I'll have to make do with the first 6 and just go to the library, I guess, which is fine. I'm saving money, and the library has everything I need. So maybe it was a good thing. I don't know. Okay. Here we have this Penguin publication. This is On Writing History from Herodotus to Herodian. Herodian was a 3rd century AD. I can't remember off the top of my head. 3rd century? He wrote a work called The History of the Empire, which is published by the Loeb Classical Library in 2 volumes, and it covers the Roman Empire after the death of, I can't remember, is it after the death or like during the life and then afterwards of Marcus Aurelius? I can't quite remember. And Herodotus is from the 5th century BC, so this is like 5th century history to 3rd century AD. And it's a collection of ancient writers during that time span, and snippets from their works where they discuss history itself. So what does Herodotus say about history writing? What is Thucydides? What is Polybius, Sallust, Livy, Tacitus, Suetonius? So this is a great publication by Penguin. They did a similar volume called the Art of Rhetoric, which covers, it's like in the same manner of different ancient writers. It's a collection of different ancient writers writing about rhetoric. I don't have that volume, but I have this because I love ancient history, and I've read pretty much all the major and minor Roman historians, or not Roman, ancient historians. So this is, for someone like me, this is a perfect publication. And then here we have The New Science of Giambattista Vico, a very important work, and at the time, truly original thinking. Yeah. And this is a great edition to get because it has an introduction by Anthony Grafton, a great scholar of the early modern period. So that is the second shelf on this column. So going to the third shelf, we have Richmond Lattimore's translation of the Iliad, with drawings by Leonard Baskin. The illustrations in this book are quite jarring, I'll just put it that way. If you've ever seen a copy of this, yeah, the illustrations are very unsettling. I have not yet read this translation of Homer. I've read the Iliad 3 times, but I've never got to this translation. So this will be the next translation I read. And probably the last one I'll read before I finally lock down Homeric Greek. But yeah, this is it's an oversized edition, and but yeah, I don't know if it's a downside, but the drawings of this are very jarring. So yeah, there's that. Here we have the Theban Eagle, Pindar. This is his victory songs. This is published by Johns Hopkins University Press. He was a lyric poet of the 5th century BC. And he sung of athletes and gods and heroes. And he was revered in his time, and much later as well. Alexander the Great, when Thebes revolted against Alexander, he stormed the city and razed it to the ground, and he destroyed every building except for the house of Pindar. That's how revered he was. Alexander said, destroy the city except for Pindar's house. So that goes to show you, what the broader Greece thought about, again, what they referred to as the Theban eagle. Because his verse would soar, as they would say. We have and Alan Mandelbaum's translation of the Metamorphoses of Ovid. And then here's a jump. We're doing another jump here in terms of subject matter. This is the Everyman's Library edition of the King James Bible. So we have the Old Testament and the New Testament. I got this set for 2 reasons. Well, I guess 3, because I love the Everyman's Library editions. You got bookmarks inside. I wanted an edition of the King James where the Old and New were separated. And the Old Testament has an introduction by George Steiner, the great critic George Steiner. So this is my go-to edition of the King James Bible. Here we have a great Penguin volume. This is The Desert Fathers, the sayings of the early Christian monks. There's a great cover there. What is this cover? A hippocentaur showing Saint Anthony the Hermit the way to Saint Paul the Hermit. Where is this located? The Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris. Look at that. Yeah, so early Christianity for me is very interesting. I'm very interested in those formative years, the first few centuries, where the Romans would refer to the early Christians as a sort of cult. I guess that's the words of Tacitus, to the time of Eusebius. That period of the church is very interesting to me. And I guess also to St. Augustine here. This is the Confessions and the City of God. Go. Another huge jump. We go from, okay, you're thinking, okay, well, after St. Augustine, who could be next on this bookshelf? Is it Boethius? Is it Gregory of Tours? Is it the Ecclesiastical Bede? Thomas Aquinas, maybe? Nope, and no. It's Montaigne. This is from, what is this? Stanford. Yeah, Stanford University Press. And this is the Donald Frame translation, the essays, the travel journal, and the letters. Everyman's Library publishes this exact same edition. And I currently don't have a translation of the Screech, the M.A. Screech translation of Montaigne, which I really want. But yeah, this is my edition of Montaigne, which serves me very well. Here we have Chapman's Homer. So we have the Iliad and the Odyssey. George Chapman was an Elizabethan, and he did the world the great service of rendering Homer into glorious Elizabethan verse. I first came to know of George Chapman and his translation through what I would suspect the way most people did, which is through John Keats, his poem on first looking into Chapman's Homer, which is a wonderful poem. Keats felt nothing about Alexander Pope's translation of Homer, which was the standard in schools at the time. But when he encountered George Chapman, he was so elated that he just dashed off one of his most famous poems, the next day. I would recommend reading that poem and then reading a Wikipedia article about it, because it'll give you a lot of context for what the hell John Keats is talking about in that poem, but it's great. And I'm so glad that, is it Princeton? This is Princeton, right? Yeah, Princeton. That Princeton does Chapman's Homer. I don't know if they publish this hardcover set anymore. They do the paperback still, but I wanted the hardcover, and I got these dust jackets with Mylar. So, yeah. Here we have Bill Shakespeare, the complete works. I like this edition, this Oxford text, because it just gives you Shakespeare. There's no like notes in the way. Not saying notes are bad, but I just wanted like a clean, just a naked version of the works of Shakespeare with no critical apparatus in the way, at least on the bottom of the page. But I want to get there's another edition of this that I want from the Oxford. Oh, the Oxford Standard Authors series. They did like a smaller version of the complete works. It's more portable. I want a more portable version because this is a bit unruly to carry around. But I still love it. It's good for when you're like, sitting on the couch, but I want something that I could take in a backpack. So I'm keeping my eyes out for that Oxford Standard Authors edition of Shakespeare. So yeah. Here we have, to me, is one of the most, the Elizabethans that intrigue me the most. He's not the one that intrigues me the most, but he's one of them. This is Francis Bacon, the Essays. The Elizabethan who intrigues me the most is Sir Walter Raleigh, who I don't currently have any works of, which is kind of outrageous. But, and this is also the only Francis Bacon that I have. I haven't done any research in regards to this, but what I really want is like a 4-volume set of like the works of Francis Bacon. I want all of his works in one set. I go through periods where I'll have the advancement of learning, the New Organon, the New Atlantis, but they come and go. I usually don't keep those copies. This is retained just because it's a good Penguin edition, and I like the cover. But I'm really looking for that complete set. So that's one of those works that I keep my eye out for when I'm in bookstores. But yeah, these are wonderful, these essays. So yeah, okay, and then here we have. Don Quixote. This is the Edith Grossman translation, and if you want to read Don Quixote and you haven't, or if you've read him in English but you want a better translation and you haven't read this, read this. This translation is amazing. It is. No matter what translation you read of Don Quixote, it's gonna be funny, but this is outrageously funny. It's Cervantes is rendered so well here, and. So yeah, this is my go-to copy of Don Quixote. And then the last book on this shelf here is John Milton's Paradise Lost. I have one other edition of Paradise Lost here, but I don't have any other volumes of Milton. I don't have the other poems. I don't have Samson Agonistes. I don't have Paradise Regained. I don't have any of the prose works, which I need to fix. I need more Milton on my bookshelves, but this is my go-to edition here. So that is the third bookshelf the third shelf in this column. Okay, so going to the bottom shelf here on this middle column, the first book we have, this book was published by the National Archaeological Museum of Athens, and it coincided with an exhibit that was on display at the museum from July to October of 2004. And it also coincided with the Olympics at the time. The Summer Olympics were taking place in Athens. They were returning to Athens, or to Greece, I should say. And this book is Aegon. Aegon is a very important concept to ancient Greek culture, particularly from the Homeric period, so the Dark Ages of Greece, or the late Dark Ages, you could say, to about the middle, or I guess like the middle of the 5th century BC, sort of reaching its full culmination in Pindar, but after Pindar, it does not have that same, it's not as close to the core of Greek culture after that point. But Aegon is the Greek word for contest, competition, also associated with concepts of aristocracy as well. a perfect example of how important this spirit, or not spirit, I should say, but this, well, I guess you could say the agonal spirit is due to the, best exemplified in the fact that the Greeks, the ancient Greeks, had the Olympics. They created the Olympics, and they had all these athletic festivals, and so I first became aware of this concept through lectures by Jakob Burckhardt, who he did a study of the Renaissance, but he also did a series of lectures between 1861 and 1875 on ancient Greek culture, from the Homeric period down to the Hellenistic age. And he did a lecture on what he calls the agonal age, which he was one of the first people to identify this concept as being at the core of ancient Greek culture, the spirit of competition, which affected all parts of Greek life. And so this particular edition, so the exhibit that was on display at the same time as the Olympics, was to show the concept of agon in Greek works of art. So vases, sculptures, things like that. So throughout this book, you can see the kind of stuff that was on display in this exhibit. Let's see here. There you go. There you go. So yeah, I would have loved to have seen that, but alas, I was a mere boy when that occurred. So hopefully the National Archaeological Museum does something like this again. But regarding this book particularly, I was shocked when I found it. It was one of those books that I had no knowledge of prior to finding I found this in an antiquarian bookstore. Usually when I go to used bookstores, I have a list of 1,000+ titles in the back of my head that I'm constantly looking for. So when I'm entering a bookstore, I'm on the hunt. I'm not just moseying around, just like I'm basically looking for something. I'm always looking for something. But there are times where I do come across a book I've never heard of before that directly aligns with my interests. And this is a case with this book, because I'd never heard of it. And when I found it in the bookstore, I was immediately bewildered. I was like, oh my God, what is this? And I went online and I went to bookfinder.com and I searched this title. And turns out the only copy of this online for sale was from the bookstore I was currently in. So that bookstore had sold online as well as in person. And so the copy I was holding in my hand was the only one available on the internet. So I did pay a little bit of money for this. It was a little expensive, but since it so directly aligned with my interest, I could easily justify it. I don't know how easy it is to get this book. I don't know how common it is. I don't know how many copies were printed by the National Archaeological Museum at Athens, but I'm very grateful to have this. So, yeah. Let's see here. So next we have this book by Gisela Richter. I think I'm saying that right. This is The Sculpture and Sculptors of the Greeks. Greek sculpture is another one of those subjects that I love reading about. You'll see here many books on it. And this was, I think, the standard work for a while in English. I think it's since been usurped by a book. Well, not usurped, but there are other great books on the subject now. But this is the 4th edition, so it goes to show me how many times this is printed. And see if you can see that difference in color there. It's that's the division between the text and the pictures. So yeah, this is the back of the book. All these sculptures. So yeah, I was very glad to find this. Found this in a used bookstore. Next we have, this is Greek Architecture by A.W. Lawrence. It's in this box set. This is from the Pelican History of Art. I've seen a lot of editions from this series in bookstores. They're kind of common. Fun fact, A.W. Lawrence is the brother of T.E. Lawrence, Lawrence of Arabia. That's kind of interesting. I think the Lawrence brothers had an affinity for architecture because T.E. Lawrence wrote a book called Crusader Castles. He was obsessed with Crusader architecture. But his brother wrote this book on Greek architecture for the Pelican History of Art. That's kind of cool. Here we have John Boardman's book, The Diffusion of Classical Art in Antiquity, which is about the impact that Greek art had on non-Greek peoples in the ancient world, and how those works of Greek art spread around the Mediterranean and the Black Sea region as well. So, how did this book examines the impact on the Romans, the Etruscans, the Scythians, the Phoenicians, the Thracians, the Egyptians. So yeah, this is a very interesting book, and I'm glad I found it in this hardcover. It's very nice. Okay, so the next book here is Lord Elgin and the Marbles, The Controversial History of the Parthenon Sculptures. This is by William St. Clair, who wrote That Greece Might Still Be Free. And this is a great book. This is a great book for anyone interested on the subject of these works of art, which were removed sometimes in a most violent way from the Parthenon, one of the most famous buildings in the world, removed from Greece, from Athens, and taken to England, where they now reside in the British Museum. This is a biography, in many ways, of Lord Elgin, and tells the story of how those sculptures got to England. It's a very interesting story, and if you're like me, who, when first learning about the Parthenon sculptures and how they're still in the British Museum, your first instinct is return them to Greece right now. Not saying my opinion has changed, but my understanding of how those sculptures got there has certainly become more nuanced, because Lord Elgin is sort of seen as an arch-villain. Was he, spotless as the lamb? No. But there's a lot of nuance to this story. He believed he was doing something right, but anyway, I could talk for a long time about the Parthenon sculptures. It's one of those subjects I've read a lot about, and I highly recommend this book. But I will say, for some reason, Oxford is so guilty of this. This book is outrageously priced. If you want to buy it new, it's like $80. I have no idea why. Why? I don't understand. Sometimes I just don't understand Oxford University Press. They just totally price people out on these books. And anyway, I could rant about that for hours as well. So look for used copies of this. Don't buy this new. Just look for a used copy if you're interested in it. But hopefully the price has decreased online. I bought this used for like $30, which is still more than I would have liked to have paid. But this is one of those books I'll read many times. So yeah, that's Lord Elgin and the Marbles. Okay. Here we have the Acropolis in the Age of Pericles. This is an abridgment of a larger work, the Athenian Acropolis, History, Mythology, and Archaeology from the Neolithic Era to the Present. I'd like to get that the full work, but I found this. I knew of this work for a while. I didn't buy it online. I was tempted to, but I didn't. And I eventually found it in a bookstore. So, okay. These next two works are also by William St. Clair, and they are published recently. Recently in the last 5 years, I think 2021-ish, 2021, 2023, sometime there. We have this book, Who Saved the Parthenon? A New History of the Acropolis Before, During, and After the Greek Revolution. is a huge work. And then we have the classical Parthenon, recovering the strangeness of the ancient world. These books are online for free from open book publishers, just like the book that Greece might still be free and that translation of Hyperion that I mentioned. I will remember to put a link for those in the description if people are interested. So yeah, these are So William St. Clair published Lord Elgin and the Marbles, I believe, in 1967. And then there was 3 editions of Lord Elgin and the Marbles. The final one, the one that I had, was from 1997. But he spent much of his life studying the Parthenon and its very complicated history. And so these 2 works are a culmination of a lifetime of thinking about the Parthenon and everything regarding it. So yeah, great works. Here we have 2 books published by trustees of the British Museum. This is The Parthenon Sculptures by Ian Jenkins. Gives you close-up views of, let's see here, of the art there. Let's see, there we go. And then we have, the Parthenon frieze. So yeah, that's cool. All right, one second. Next we have this book. This is from an old publisher, the Argonaut Inc. Publishers of Chicago. I think they published a lot of books like mid-20th century. This is Ancient Writers on Greek Sculpture. And my particular edition was owned by a historian of art, of classical art. This is Caroline Hauser. She wrote a book called Greek Monumental Bronze Sculpture, as well as a few other things. And this book contains ancient writers writing about sculpture, ancient sculpture, and it's got the original text and translation. So, yeah, this is a really cool volume. And the Argonaut publisher, I don't think they publish anything nowadays. I don't know if they're still in business, but they did a lot of books. We'll see a few more on this bookshelf tour that are great. They're great. I usually, when I see one of those Argonaut publications, I usually get one. Okay. Next we have, this is from Yale University Press, and this is Greek Sculpture by Andrew Stewart, with the subtitle, An Exploration. So volume 1 is text, and volume 2 is plates. And the text is double columned. So there's a lot in here. This is a treasure trove. And then here are the, here we go, there are the plates. So yeah, great work. This is a book, another book that I did not know about, but I found in a bookstore and was thrilled. This is a book titled Heroes from the Sea. I don't know if you can see that. This is a book about the Riace bronzes, which are 2 Greek bronze statues of 2 soldiers, or warriors, Warrior A and Warrior B. They are probably my favorite sculptures from antiquity. They're terrifying to behold to the eye. And the story of how they were found is amazing. They were found at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. They were in the seabed. They had fallen overboard after a Roman ship carrying them had sunk sometime, I can't remember what century, but some wealthy Roman was having a ship take these statues from Greece to Italy, and that ship sunk, and those statues fell to the bottom of the sea, and that's where they resided for 2,000 years until they were found by divers. They saw a hand sticking out of the sand, and they thought it might have been a dead body. And then when they went to go grab it and see what was there, they pulled out this Athenian warrior. It's amazing. Let me show you a picture here. There are the divers with one of the statues after it was taken out of the sea. And they're called the Riace bronzes because they were found off the coast of Italy, Riace. There are the two statues in their exhibit in Italy. Let's see if there's some more pictures here I can show you. Let's see. So this book, some of the chapters in this book, I should say, are the bronzes in the museum at Reggio Calabria. There's the shipwreck, the critical analysis of the statues, the style and dating, the workshop of the bronzes, the provenience, the popularity of the bronzes, and then from absence to sexuality. Let's see if I can get some more pictures here. I know there's some really good pictures in here. Why can't I find them? 1 second. Oh, wow, yeah, look at this. Being taken up. So this is Warrior A. And then there's a close-up of Warrior A. Terrifying to behold. Here's Warrior B. There he is. Yeah, look at that. Unbelievable. It's remarkable that we have these. It's remarkable that the statues were not. It's a miracle that we found them. It's also a miracle that they weren't immediately sold onto like the antiquities black market and disappeared forever, and acquired by some absurdly wealthy person who wants to adorn their eighth home. It's fantastic that we have those because there's so few examples of Greek bronze from that era, because bronze statues of the ancient world hardly survived because either they were destroyed, in most cases they were melted down for, in later antiquity and the Middle Ages. And so we have to be grateful for any bronze statues that survive from the ancient world. And we have two of the finest examples of bronze statue, two fine examples of bronze statues from the 5th century BC. So it's fantastic that we have those statues. And I'm so glad I have this book. I love the title, Heroes from the Sea. And so, yeah, really cool book for anyone interested in the Riace bronzes. Here we have Polykleitos, the Doryphoros, and tradition. Doryphoros is this particular statue type, which is attributed to a sculptor named Polykleitos, whose original work does not survive, but there were so many copies of this statue and this pose that Polykleitos had a huge influence on ancient sculpture. And so I don't know how, there are a lot of examples of this statue surviving. I saw, if I remember correctly, I saw one in the Uffizi in Florence. Yeah, Polykleitos is one of the great sculptors of the ancient world. And speaking of great sculptors of the ancient world, I have a book on Lysippos. This is from Duke University Press, published in 1927. Lysippos was probably most famously known as the court sculptor of Alexander the Great. Lysippos was the most talented sculptor of his time, and Alexander prohibited anyone but Lysippos to copy Alexander's image and likeness. So any example you know of Alexander, or at least you can think of the archetypal images of Alexander, they come from Lysippos. And if it's true that the face of the Colossus of Rhodes was based on Alexander's image and likeness, then you could say Lysippos was the sculptor of the face of the Colossus of Rhodes. That's cool to think about. And I just found this in a bookstore. Really nice. Here we have a work I searched for years. And I didn't think I'd ever have a copy because it's outrageously expensive and very hard to find. But I was lucky enough to find a great copy and for a comparatively reasonable price. And this is by Gisela Richter, who did the Sculptures and Sculptors of the Greeks. This is the Portraits of the Greeks, and it's 3 volumes. This is probably one of my most cherished books on my bookshelves. And this is like an inventory of all of the sculptures, the busts that we have of famous ancient Greeks, like Homer or Aristotle or Themistocles or who else? Alexander or something like that. So you have, these lists of extant portraits, and then in the back you'll have, let's see here, all these different examples of busts of the same person. So there you have Pseudo Seneca, or also known as Hesiod. Let's see, some other examples here. Here's Pericles. All of our examples of Pericles. So I am very glad to have this full set. You can get an abridgment of this work. There is a single volume abridgment, and it So I probably recommend finding that. That's what I had for the longest time, until I came across this, and I just was so overjoyed. Here are 2 more Folio Society books. This is a book on the Grand Tour, when in the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries, when predominantly young, wealthy Englishmen were sent out by their fathers to go tour Europe and, learn Italian and French and become cultured. So there's a book on that, and then here's a book on the Black Sea, which really should be sitting next to my Brodel over here of the Mediterranean. I love books like this that look at that are histories of bodies of water and the history that has occurred on that body of water and the people who have lived around it. I love books like that. Okay, so down here we have The Dawn of Art. This is a book about Chauvet Cave. These are the oldest paintings in the world. They're about 30,000 years old, and they were found in the south of France in the 90s. They were in a cave that had been sealed off by like a rock slide, and a group of people who were looking for like hidden caves had come across, had found this. They felt a draft through a crack in these rocks, and they were able to tunnel their way in, and they found this. I came to know about this because of these paintings, because of a documentary by the great Werner Herzog, who we'll see later on in this bookshelf tour. Werner Herzog is probably, I have a few contestants for my favorite director, but Werner Herzog is up there. I just love his work. And he did a documentary in 2010 called Cave of Forgotten Dreams, which is about this particular cave. The cave has been totally sealed off because it's a cultural heritage site, I believe, and the public is not allowed in there, that's for sure. And before it was sealed off, Herzog was let in to do a documentary about these paintings. And that documentary is incredible. It's my favorite documentary ever. And I don't know how many times I've watched it, and I recommend it at every opportunity I get. So, this is a great book. And then I have this Oxford book here. This is the Atlas of Exploration. As we'll see more later on, history of exploration is one of my favorite subjects to read about. So this is a, I found this very cheaply online, so I just got it. So yeah. Okay. Here we have, this is a 3-volume set, really big. This is the Antiquities of Athens, Stuart and Revet. I have to resurrect my memory here. Stuart and Revet were 2 18th century Englishmen. Is that right? Were they both English? And they went to Athens to make drawings of all the Greek art that they could find. So temples and statues and everything in between. And so let me show you some illustrations in here. So this is a facsimile of that work. And these were done to like help educate artists in England at the time who couldn't make it to Greece. And so here are some examples of their drawings that they saw in Greece. Let's see here. So architecture, and they're taking dimensions as well. Let's see here. So there's the frontispiece there. There's James Stewart. Let's see. It's wait, hold on a second. Give me a moment here. And it's dedicated to the king. Let's see here. So yeah, so here's some more examples. So I found I knew of Stuart and Revet through my reading Lord Elgin and the Marbles by William St. Clair. But then I came across this in a used bookstore, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I got it for an outrageously cheap price. And so, yeah, so this 3-volume facsimile of that work from the 18th century. Here, the last book on this column is one of my most cherished books, one of the absolute feats of scholarship, of classical scholarship in the last 50 years. And it's the Barrington Atlas of the Greek and Roman world. Absolutely monstrous. And this work is incredible. Incredible. This is the ancient world. All the known sites. So here you go. Here is the full spread of this atlas. And all the different towns, the ancient names and towns and places. This is, again, a tremendous work of scholarship. But very expensive. I bought this used. It's not in the best condition. Some of the maps are drawn on, but yeah, it was worth it to me. To get this new is about $500. That's outrageous. I won't say it's an unfair price, because the amount of labor that went into it was probably astronomical. But you know, universities can pay that price, but individuals, yeah, not unless you're really interested in it and you want really a clean copy. So I had to do with this relatively beat up copy. So yeah. Okay, now we're moving to this third column. And before I start at the top here, I have some books on my desk right below me that I'm gonna talk about first. The first book here is Plutarch's Lives. This is the revised Dryden translation, published by the Modern Library. It's got a nice cover there. When I read Plutarch for the first time, this is the edition that I read. I love Plutarch. I love Plutarch. His whole, this is very dramatic lighting. Hopefully it's not distracting at all. I love Plutarch, and I'm just patiently waiting for a new 1-volume edition. I don't understand how, for the last 50 years, they have been slicing and dicing Plutarch into smaller volumes when they should be doing this. That we should. This translation is from the 17th century, or like the early 18th century, end of 17th century, 18th century. But it was revised. So this is a translation that's several hundred years old that was revised like 150 years ago. Why? I mean, I love it. I love this translation. Why has Plutarch not been rendered in one volume with a new translation? It's simply outrageous. We should not be treating our great ancient authors like this. And I feel like, I mean, the incentive is on a publishing house now is to divide Plutarch up for, as they do now with like the Roman lives and the Greek lives and whatnot. I understand the incentive because if that's for schools, you know, you want your 5th century BC lives and you want your 1st century BC lives together in just a single volume if you're covering the end of the Roman Republic or you're doing the Greece in the 5th century. But you can do that, and also you can do this. You can do a 1 volume, new translation. Okay, rant over. Plutarch is one of my favorite authors, so I feel justified in expressing my passion. More Emerson. These are the volumes of Emerson that I referred to, and still refer to, prior to getting that set I have back there. I have, this is a modern library, so I have the, let's see here. Essays, the essays, the lectures, nature, representative men, English traits, the conduct of life. And then I have the journals, the selected journals, which is what satiated me until I found the unabridged. So yeah, but I'll still always keep this because it's quite portable and it has, it's still 2,000 pages of Emerson's journals. So yeah. And then I have this book that was published last year. It's a new translation. I'm so glad that Princeton did this. This is Johann Gottfried Hölder's Ideas for the Philosophy of the History of Mankind, which was originally published in 4 volumes in German in the 18th century. And as far as I'm aware of, there was no unabridged English language translation. There was an abridged translation from this old series, maybe about 75 years ago, under the title of Reflections of the History of Mankind by Hölder, of course. But Princeton came out with this last year, which is, it was perfectly timed because at the time I was reading the book Fathers and Crows by William T. Vollmann, and he includes a quote at the beginning of each chapter of that book. And several chapters began with a quote from Hölder from this work. And so I was like, I need to get a copy of this work. And then sure enough, at that same time, unabridged translation. Thank you, Princeton. You consistently prove why you're one of the best university presses. Okay, so top shelf here. This is my little Melville corner. It's not all the Melville I have. We'll see a lot more of him. But I have all 4 of the Library of America volumes. So I have Type A, Omu, Mardi, his early quote-unquote romances. Type A and Omu were sold very well, and the public had no idea what to do with Mardi. Here we have Redburn, White Jacket, Moby Dick. Here's some more grizzled Melville. Here we have Pierre, Israel Potter, The Confidence Man, Piazza Tales, Billy Budd. There he is, looking quite distinguished. And then we have a great volume. You can get many editions of those works, but Library of America did everyone a great service. Thank you, Library of America, for doing the complete poems of Melville. As far as I'm aware of, this is the only edition of Melville that includes Chlorel with all the other published poems. You'll see the published poems. There are editions of like just the collected poems, but I think Chlorel is usually separate. But as far as I'm aware of, this is the only edition of Melville which has all of his poetry in 1 volume. in a very nice volume, I might add. All of Library of America volumes are fantastic. And this was published in 2019. There's Old Man Melville. Unfortunately, this is currently not in print. You can't buy this right now off the Library of America website, which is, I guess, probably due to a lack of funding for this particular volume. Some volumes have a huge amount of funding, so they're is constantly in print. Like this edition of Emerson will always be in print, and it was published, several decades ago, where this came out in 2019 is now out of print. So what I would tell you is that if you're in any way a fan of Melville and you see this, get it. I don't know how many opportunities you'll get you'll have to get this book until there's another printing run. Hopefully they do another printing run of this. So yeah, this is a permanent mainstay on my shelf. This particular volume. Here, very interesting book. I don't know if I should call it a book. It's more of a... I'll explain what it is. This is the Melville Log by J. Leda. This is the second printing, the second edition. This was this is from 1969. But the first edition of the Melville Log, which I do own, but not with me right now, was published in the 50s. And the purpose of the Melville Log was to be a documentary record of Melville's life. So J. Leda collected basically as much information as you would need, at least at a bare minimum, to write a biography of Herman Melville. You won't be able to do the work that Herschel Parker did for his biography of Melville, which is like 1,800 pages total or something like that. But you'll have enough to get started if you're a fanatic of Melville and you have an inclination towards biographies and writing. But even if you have no intention of writing a biography of Melville, here is an immense collection of records about Melville's life. What did he write about his own life, and from letters and journals, and what did other people around him write, and also reviews of his books in the press. So this is an amazing idea, this amazing concept to do for an author. And there exists a similar edition for Edgar Allan Poe. There's a 1-volume book titled The Poe Log, which I've only ever seen in a library. I've never seen it in a used bookstore or anything like that. But I know it exists. And I know that there's rumor of a new Melville Log, which I know Herschel Parker, again, I keep bringing up Herschel Parker. For those who don't know, he is one of the most recent biographers of Melville, and probably there are biographies, again, there's biographies of Melville that are like, 300 to 500 pages. His biography is 2 volumes, and each volume is like 800 pages. He went hard in the paint, as they say. There is rumor, it's confirmed, but it isn't out yet. There's the new Melville Log. There's going to be a third version of the Melville Log, but I think those rumors go back to the 90s, and yet it still has yet to be published. So will we ever see a new edition? Will we ever see the new Melville Log? I don't know, but if it does ever come out, I'm buying it. So that's the first shelf up here. Okay, second shelf. Here we go. This is a history of cartography. As I mentioned earlier, the history of exploration is of great interest to me. And not only that, I'm interested in geography, topography, as we'll see in a second here, wayfinding as well. I love reading about this stuff. And so I found this massive work. When I realized I needed some books about maps on my shelf. I came across this, and I was like, oh, that's it, literally exactly what I was looking for. A massive work with lots of maps in here. Let's see. So there you go. There's some plates, and then you got, let's see. Yeah. So plenty of illustrations, and all about the history of maps. So So yeah, I'm very glad to have this. This next book, speaking of wayfinding, this is The Lost Art of Finding Our Way. This is published by Harvard University Press. When was this, 2013 or something? Yeah, 2013. Why did I remember that? If you've ever wondered about how to get from one place to another without the luxury of GPS, you know, if I want to get from somewhere by land or by sea, how do I do that without GPS? Using things like celestial navigation, or you know, what information you can gauge from things on the ground and whatnot. And of the history of exploration that I'm interested in, of one particular interest of mine in that area of study is ancient exploration. And I'm very fascinated about how ancient explorers were able to navigate with modern luxuries like GPS, which makes things insanely easy for us, so we lose an appreciation for how we actually get to places. So yeah, this is a great book. How to get to places by land and sea. Here is another example of a book that it was on a subject I was directly interested in, and I wanted books on, but I didn't know any books on the subject. And I came across this in a bookstore, and I thought, this is exactly what I'm looking for. This is fantastic. I love that sense of discovery in a bookstore. Again, sort of going back to what I said before, I'm usually on the hunt for something. I know of something and I'm hunting for it when I go into a bookstore, but sometimes I discover something that I've never seen before, and yet it's like, this is exactly what I needed. This is The Haven Finding Art, the history of navigation from Odysseus to Captain Cook. What an amazing title, The Haven Finding Art. I love that. So yeah, a history of navigation. Perfect. Here is a great book for anyone I would recommend for who have an interest in geography as well as ancient history. This is The Geographic Background of Greek and Roman History. And I love these old Oxford University Press books with the tan spines. It's like, yeah, I have a weak spot for these books. And I love these books because they list other books on the back. And I often discover a lot of books through, in this way. And there's a book on here a work I'd never heard of before, but I knew the author because I'd read a work from this author that I loved. The author is T. Rice Holmes, and he wrote a book called The Architect of the Roman Empire, which is about Octavian, and the Emperor Augustus. And I loved it. It was an amazing work of scholarship from 100 years ago. And I didn't know of any other works by him, and then I saw that he wrote a work called, can you see it? The Roman Republic and the Founder of the Empire. 3-volume set. I don't have this, but it's one of those books that's I keep in the back of my mind that I'm constantly on the look for. But anyway, this is, yeah, Geographic Background of Greek and Roman History. M. Carey, we'll see this author later on. Yeah, highly recommend. Here we have a more recent work. It's not the only work of history of ancient geography that I have, but this is by Duane Roller, who's probably the most knowledgeable scholars living today on ancient exploration. This is Ancient Geography, the Discovery of the World in Classical Greece and Rome. There you see an old illustration of the Colossus of Rhodes. Did it actually look like that? Not exactly. But yeah, this is a slim thing. We'll see another history of ancient geography later on. But yeah, and it's got a quote, or it's got praise from Richard Talbert on the back, who is responsible for the Barrington Atlas of the Greek and Roman world. Here is a more recent publication. This is To the Ends of the Earth, how ancient conquerors, explorers, scientists, and traders connected the world. This was published by Oxford University Press in 2024. Yeah, it's, as far as I'm aware of, there are 3 books in English you can read on the history of ancient exploration. This is the most recent. We'll see the other 2 later on this bookshelf tour. A jump in subject here. This is The Renaissance Discovery of Classical Antiquity by Roberto Weiss. And I had a paperback of this for the longest time, but I really wanted the hardcover because I love this. I love the hardcover here. This is from the Humanities Press. I don't know of any other publications from this press. So if there's anyone watching this who does, let me know, because I haven't done the research yet myself, but anything titled the Humanities Press probably has some great stuff, as exemplified in this. And I predominantly got this book because of the parts about Renaissance antiquarianism, who is best exemplified in the next two volumes right there. This is the Itati volumes of Syriac of Ancona. This is the Life and Early Travels and the Later Travels. Again, I love this publication series. It's got these are dual language books like Loeb, and you could call how would you title him? Could you call him the father of archaeology? Yeah, you could make that argument. He is a very important Renaissance scholar. He traveled widely in the Mediterranean, and he was very interested in the physical remains of ancient civilization. And he recorded many Latin inscriptions that no longer survive, and records of ancient buildings that no longer survive. So Syriac of Ancona, we owe a lot to him for our knowledge of Rome, because he recorded things that are no longer there, that have since been destroyed. And so yeah, his predominant interest was in the physical remains of the ancient world, and he didn't ever publish a work titled Early Travels or Later Travels. These are collections done by Harvard University Press. So this is a tremendous service that the Itati Renaissance Library has done everybody by collecting these and translating them. So yeah. And on a side note, I've been considering making a video about Syriac of Ancona, so I guess let me know if you're interested in that. Here we have two Renaissance book hunters. This is a very famous set of correspondence about the age in which these men of the Renaissance went out in hunt of manuscripts, going to various monasteries around Europe, trying to recover classical texts. Petrarch was among them. Thanks to him, we have he recovered much of the letters of Cicero, particularly the Cicero's letters to Atticus. And then here you get the letter in which Lucretius was rediscovered, de rerum natura. Now we're going back to exploration. This is Admiral of the Ocean Sea, A Life of Christopher Columbus by Samuel Eliot Morison. And there is our author, looking quite distinguished on the back. Samuel Eliot Morison was himself a very experienced sailor, and so he brings that knowledge to this biography of Columbus. So you get a very good understanding of Columbus's technical capabilities in navigation. And as far as I'm aware of, this is the foremost biography of Columbus that's out there. Washington Irving also did a biography of Columbus, but anyways, yeah, this is, if you're interested in Columbus, this is a great place to start. Here we have more Samuel Eliot Morison. This is The European Discovery of America. And Volume 1 is The Northern Voyages. And Volume 2 is The Southern Voyages. And on the back here, you can see Morison surveying land from an airplane for particular areas that he was writing about. And there he is with his wife. He was diligently working. And so here is the next book. This is J.C. Beaglehole's great biography of Captain James Cook. Beaglehole is probably the best scholar that Cook has had yet and will ever have. He also was the editor of a 4-volume set of the journals of Captain Cook, as well as a 3-volume set of the coastal charts of Captain Cook. And then he wrote this biography, and he also wrote a book called The Exploration of the Pacific, which I don't have but very much want. Interesting news I read recently. Captain Cook's ship, the HMS Endeavour, was its final resting place was recently located. It's located in the harbor of Newport, Rhode Island. After Cook's time, it was used as a transport ship for troops during the American Revolutionary War, and it was eventually renamed Lord Sandwich, I believe. Imagine naming the HMS Endeavour, renaming it Lord Sandwich. And then it was purposefully sunk. I think I remember reading that correctly. In the Newport Harbor. And it's and this is just recent news in the last 2 weeks or something like that. So that's kind of interesting. Cook's been on my mind. Okay, so that's this shelf. Okay, going to this third shelf here. We have From Cyrus to Alexander, A History of the Persian Empire by Pierre Briand. This is an incredible work of history. The observations in this book are amazing. There is a particular observation in this book that is seared into my memory. It was I had all these this array of facts I knew about the Persian Empire, and then I read this book, or read this particular section, and then the stars aligned, and I had this watershed realization about the Persian Empire, and it was, anyway, I could talk at length about it. The Persian Empire is of great interest to me. We'll see some more works here, and this was when I graduated college. This was a gift that I got from my dad. So yeah, I love this book. This is another book by Pierre Briand. This is Darius and the Shadow of Alexander. Darius. This is published by, this is Harvard, right? Yeah, Harvard University Press. That is from the famous Alexander mosaic, which is currently located in Naples. And there is Darius III, who was the last Achaemenid king of kings. Darius, in all the ancient accounts, Diodorus Siculus, Quintus Curtius Rufus, Plutarch, Arrian Justin, the Vulgate cycle, he is always usurped or under the shadow of the tremendous personality and achievements of Alexander. And this book tries to get a more realistic portrait of Darius under the mountain of trying to see through all the praise of Alexander to find the real picture of this, because Darius is, by the ancient sources, seen as the exact opposite of Alexander. The way the Greeks characterized the East was the decadence, the opulence, versus these heroic exploits by Alexander. Anyway, a great work of scholarship. But I must admit, I've not yet read it. I'm speaking about a book so confidently that I've not yet read, but this is my understanding of the book. And so this is very high up on my reading list. Yeah, Pierre Briand. Thank you for your work. Here is a gift from my friend who is watching this video. This is the Persian Empire, a corpus of sources from the Achaemenid period. This is published by Routledge, who does some really great stuff. And this is a massive, massive volume. And it's just a collection of sources about the Achaemenids. And sorry, I just lost my train of thought. I heard a car honking outside. But yeah, mostly, predominantly Greek authors in here. So I'm familiar with a lot of the writers in here, but I've yet to read this like front to back. I really need to do that. I'll probably, yeah, Persian Empire's been on my mind recently, so this is probably higher up on my list. Here is Xenophon's Anabasis. This is from the Landmark series. This is an amazing publication, simply amazing. It was published in 2021, and it's the entire it's a new translation of the Anabasis. It's got an introduction, an endless amount of notes, maps, and essays at the back. And this is the treatment that this work deserved, because this is the story of how a 10,000 strong Greek army was caught and surrounded deep in Persian territory. This is at the end of the 5th century BC. The famous 10,000, who this author, Xenophon, played an important role in that story of their fight into the interior of the Persian Empire to help the cause of the young Cyrus against his brother Artaxerxes. And when Cyrus is killed, the Greeks are in a very desperate situation, and this is one of the most thrilling stories from antiquity. And so, yeah, we'll see the other volume from the Landmark series of Xenophon, the Hellenica, later on. But not as soon as this came out, I read this back in 2022. I think I read every word in this book. I loved it so much. I just completely devoured it. And it gave me a new appreciation for Xenophon. Because when I first came across Xenophon, I wasn't too enthused about him. Because when you go from Herodotus to Thucydides, who are both exceptionally brilliant. Well, when you go from Thucydides to the Hellenica of Xenophon, if you approach Xenophon in that way, just diving right into the Hellenica, your first instinct is to miss Thucydides, because you know that he would do such a better job at recounting the final 7 years of the Peloponnesian War. But I'll talk more about that later. So yeah, and the Landmark series, next year we should be seeing the Landmark Polybius, which I can't wait. Polybius is one of my favorite Greek authors, or favorite ancient authors in general. But we'll see Polybius later on. I'll talk more about him later. Here is the Landmark Herodotus. Again, this is from the Landmark series. This is an amazing edition of Herodotus. Introduction, notes, maps, essays. If you're new to Herodotus and you really want to understand, if you want to read his work and understand what he's writing about and the context for his times and the various aspects of his work, get this. Get this. It's well worth it, especially for the price it's at. I mean, I think last I saw to buy it new, it was like $20 or something like that. A steal. It's a steal. I feel like the publisher could easily justify these being $100. There's so much effort's gone into them. But anyway, if you're interested in Herodotus, get this. Okay. Here we have this book from middle of the 20th century. This is The Heritage of Persia by Richard Fry. And so this covers pre-Islamic Persia. And I just recently got this. This is not something I've read. Let me read the back here. In spite of repeated invasion and foreign rule, the Persians have maintained their traditions and language in a remarkable continuity. The heritage of Persia traces that continuity through more than 1,000 years, from the time the Iranians first came upon the plateau to the Islamization of the land in the 10th century AD. Professor Fry illuminates a little-known but vastly important era of history as he describes the early culture of these inventive, sophisticated, and powerful people. Here are the fabulous figures of antiquity: Cyrus and Zoroaster, the Achaemenids and the Parthians, the legends and the facts of the Iranian past, one of the greatest civilizations in human history. So I plan on reading this soon as well. And now we're jumping to around 1000 AD. This is the Shahnameh. I need to get the pronunciation right. Abul Qasim Ferdowsi, famous Book of Kings, the national epic of Persia. I'm so glad Penguin publishes this. And this is translated by Dick Davis, who just recently, for Penguin, translated a medieval Persian romance. I forget the name, but I'm keeping my eye out for it. I might end up getting it. Here we have Plato, the collected dialogues. This is my go-to edition of Plato. Everything I need. Don't really need to see much more else than that. Here is a great biography of Emerson. This is Emerson, The Mind on Fire by Robert D. Richardson. This is, as far as, I've not read all the biographies of Emerson, far from it, but as far as I'm aware of, the reputation of this book is that it's the best. And then we have another book by Robert Richardson that he wrote about, I think, 15 years after The Mind on Fire. This is First We Read, Then We Write, Emerson on the Creative Process. Slim little book. Okay. Here we have Philosophy and the Tragic Age of the Greeks by Friedrich Nietzsche. My interest in Nietzsche is, I'm very interested in his comments and his observations on ancient Greek culture. So when I found this, I instantly bought it. Here we go. We got some Aristotle, the Nicomachean Ethics, the Politics, the Poetics, and the Athenian Constitution. The other one that I'm looking for, I need to get, is The Art of Rhetoric. I don't currently have a copy of The Art of Rhetoric. So that's something I need to fix. Here we have a few more works on ancient Greece. This is from the Ancient Culture and Society series published by Norton. This is Moral Values and Political Behavior in Ancient Greece. And then we have Early Greek Science, Thales to Aristotle. And then we have Greek Science after Aristotle. There's 2 volumes set. Okay, moving to the 4th shelf here. The first work we have is Edmund Spenser's The Faerie Queene. In this edition, Penguin was very kind enough to publish the whole thing without modernizing the English. So it's it retains the original spelling of Spenser's time, so this makes this a really great Penguin to have. So there's that. We have let's see here. How do I want to do this? We have Orlando Furioso by Ludovico Ariosto. So there's Volume 1 and Volume 2. I don't know what the hell's going on here. The old mass market paperback version of this had a different cover on it. I don't know why they didn't retain it for Volume 2. But this is Barbara Reynolds' great translation of Orlando Furioso. It's the one to have, in English at least. Here we have Neville Coghill's Canterbury Tales. I don't currently have an edition of Chaucer that retains the original English spelling. Or, you know, not a non-translated version, I guess you could say. So I need to fix that. But I got this. This is a really good version to have. And it's also one that made Penguin a lot of money, apparently. Here we have Caleb Williams by William Godwin. A particular, I don't know if it's a vice, but I don't know what it is, but if a book has a William Blake illustration, I am much more inclined to get it. I don't know why, but I just love books that have a William Blake illustration on it. I wanted this book regardless, but I like this edition even more because of it has William Blake on the cover. Next is George Eliot's Middlemarch. I have the Everyman's Library edition. This is the one I decided on. I've had a few copies of this book, but yeah. And now we have a bunch of Russian novelists. We have Dead Souls by Gogol. We have Oblomov. I recently saw this painting in the Met for the first time, which is pretty cool. And then I have The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. And then finally on the shelf, I have In Search of Lost Time. So yeah, just a lot more, less history, no history, just literature on this particular shelf. So now we'll move on to the final shelf on this bookshelf. This whole bookshelf. So yeah, let's do this. Okay, this final shelf has a lot of books about language. So the first one I have here is this book called Fluent Forever. This is the revised edition. This came out just recently. We have this older book from the 1940s. This is The Loom of Language, an approach to the mastery of many languages. I've had a few editions of this book, but this is very interesting stuff. This book called Understanding Language, a guide for beginning students of Greek and Latin. And then we have this book. This is a comparative grammar of Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, and French, comparing the Romance languages, as a way of trying to learn those languages simultaneously. And then, let's see, let me get this organized here for a second. And then I have these two books here, Colloquial Spanish and Colloquial Italian. Next, we have some books on Homeric Greek. I have this older edition of Homeric Greek, a book for beginners, but I've since recently found this book. I found the 4th edition of Homeric Greek, a book for beginners. So this older edition I can now get rid of. I have, let's see here. I have this book called Homeric Vocabularies. And then I have a Homeric Dictionary. And finally, I have a lexicon of the Homeric dialect. So I have a lot of Homer-related stuff here. And then I have, let's see here. I have From Alpha to Omega, a beginning course in classical Greek. And then I also have, what's probably more famously known, is Athanase. I have the books 1 and 2. This is an older edition. And the workbook. I'm very much aware that the Italian version of Athanase is far better than the English version, but not quite there yet. And then I have Lingua Latina per se illustrata, Pars 1 Familia Romana, and then I have a companion to Familia Romana. This is a very famous Latin textbook. I'll just say book. And then I have Vox Latina. This is the pronunciation of classical Latin. And then I have 2 books on marathon running and a book that's titled The Road to Sparta, reliving the ancient battle and the epic run that inspired the world's greatest foot race. So this is about the race that is done, the Spartathlon, that is from Athens to Sparta. It's about 155 miles, if I remember off the top of my head. There's the story of Pheidippides, the runner who ran from the plain of Marathon to Athens to declare that the Greeks were victorious. And he famously died right after announced to the city that the Greeks had won. But the day before, he had done a much harder run by running all the way to Sparta. There were professional runners in ancient Greece, and he was one of them. And his run to Sparta is semi-mythical because he encounters Pan on the way back. It might be an instance of hallucination after running for long, long distances. But he ran to Sparta and back in a very short period of time. And that distance is incredibly long. And this book is about someone who did that. There's still a race today to run from Athens to Sparta. The run from Marathon to Athens is far more popular because it's technically the first marathon and where we get the length of the marathon from, obviously. But this is about the grueling race to Sparta from Athens. And then the final books on this shelf are, I forgot to mention, I have this. I have colloquial Greek. This is modern Greek. And then finally, I have some books on about film. So I have Ingmar Bergman's book, Images, My Life in Film. Ingmar Bergman wrote another book called The Magic Lantern, his autobiography. I read that a few years ago. I don't currently have a copy. But anyway, Bergman is one of my favorite directors. He's one. It's like, I think when it comes to like favorite directors, it depends on the day which one's my favorite. But the three books I have here are like the top three for me. So Bergman is one of them. The next, and someone who is most certainly my favorite filmmaker for the longest time, and still kind of is, but anyway, this is Andrei Tarkovsky's Sculpting in Time. A great book. I watched all of Tarkovsky's films and loved it. I'm a Tarkovsky fanboy. I'm one of those people. I watched all of his films, then I read this book, and then I rewatched all of his films, and I was a changed person. I was not the same as I was when I first set out to watch his entire filmography. And this is a great book. It's a great book. And then finally, for all these shelves here, this is Werner Herzog, A Guide for the Perplexed. This is Conversations with Paul Cronin. On most days, Werner Herzog is my favorite director. And this is a great book. Werner Herzog is, I admire him very deeply. So anyway, that is this first shelf, these first three columns. And I've realized I've filmed about almost 3 hours now. So I'm definitely going to have to break this up into parts. So I guess this will be the end of the first part of my bookshelf tour. Anyways, thank you for watching this particular segment, and I will begin on the other shelves now. So thanks for watching.